Thanks for joining me for episode 5 of the Social Permaculture Online Bootcamp. I'm Habib, your guide for this journey. And thanks to everyone who sent me feedback on the videos this week. It's always much appreciated. I'd love to get your constructive thoughts on the material that I'm presenting. So please also do share any resources that you've got as well. So I'm far from the final word on these concepts. I'm just making my small contribution to the larger pool of wisdom in the permaculture movement. And for all of us, expanding that pool of knowledge is what counts. And that's the project for all of us to contribute to. In this episode, we're looking at complex interconnection. We're going to explore the ways in which we are nested in webs of relationships with each other and with all of life on Earth through different intersecting ecological, social, and economic systems. And we're going to locate ourselves within that big web of interrelationships using the permaculture concept of sectors, so we can indeed surf the wave of complex interconnection. Humans simply don't exist as atomized individuals. We're not billiard balls bouncing around off each other on the billiard table of life, as some of our dominant economic ideologies would suggest. In reality, what we are parts of vast ecological, social, and economic networks. And in these networks, in these webs of networks even, every action we take inescapably has consequences that ripple out across these interconnected webs. Now think about the aggregate of everyone creating ripple effects in the same way, and those ripples bouncing and affecting us. So this creates emergent outcomes and emergent trends that are much more than the sum of their parts. And this is how complex systems work. If we're looking for an example, the way that the coronavirus is spread and our social distancing protocols for preventing this clearly show that interconnection is our reality. This is a demonstration of complex systems behavior. But even if we take a material view from the perspective of the economy, we live in a globalized economic system in which the transnational production chains of the goods and services we consume stretch across the world over vast distances. Now, these production chains obviously begin with the extraction and refinement of the resources of the stuff that we consume, which are then used to manufacture the component parts, which are then assembled into value-added products, and then they're distributed for wholesale, and finally they make it to retail sale, where we, the consumers, buy these things. And each of these steps in the chain are often spread across multiple countries, and they're often linked together by vast transportation and logistics networks. Every part of a production chain is itself composed of materials with their own production chains, linking the productive capacity of the global economy together in a colossal interconnected web. So the economy is one of these mega systems in which we are integrated within. And the restrictions on the international movement of people and goods due to COVID-19 that have been imposed by governments, these restrictions have illuminated how reliant we are on these immense production chains, and they've shown us just how fragile they can be. But as colossal as the global economy is, we still have to remember that these economies themselves are social constructions of human societies. This is one of the ways that we've created for interfacing with the environment in which we're nested in. It's not the only way, but it's an important way. But it's wholly dependent on the natural environment in which it's nested. So as the natural world goes, as the natural world changes, so inevitably do the human systems that are nested within it. And again, climate change is a good example of this. Changing the environment in which we live in has direct impacts on us. And COVID-19 is another example. But really, this gets down to a point about worldview. And for us, the reality, when you take a complex systems view, is that us as humans and the environment, we're indivisible. There's no separation there. We're deeply interconnected and entwined with all life on Earth as a constituent species within the environment, within the ecosystems that house us and on which we're dependent. So as members of that extended family of life, we've got an important role as carers and custodians of that family of life. And for me, permaculture offers a really good method for embracing that custodianship. Permaculture has tools for mapping interconnection, and the one that we're looking at here is called sector analysis. So sector analysis is about observing the factors and the forces and the flows that impact on a site. And these are the factors and forces and flows that originate outside of the boundaries of the site. So these are external influences. So sectors show us how our site is plugged into the broader systems in which it's situated. That's what the sectors are telling us. Sectors can be geographical and environmental, and they can factor in things like seasonal sun paths and shade patterns, or prevailing winds in the directions of storms, as well as flood and fire risk, where that's likely to come from on a given site. They can map the direction of flows of energy and water onto and off the site, along with the prevailing pathways of human and fauna traffic onto and off the site, as well as utility connections. They even map the potentialities for pollution and noise, among other things. So right here, we've got a powerful tool for locating our site in relation to the interconnected networks on which it's situated. So each sector then is an indicator of where these networks intersect with the site. Now for a bit of show and tell. This picture on the slide here, this is the first sector analysis that I ever constructed. And this is from my design project when I was a student in the permaculture design course at Ceres. Now, trust me, my design wasn't that awesome, and this sector analysis is not the greatest one you'll ever see. But there's a few things that this sector analysis and the better ones that you'll see elsewhere, there's things that they're trying to communicate. So the purpose of a sector analysis is all about integrating with the energies of place and understanding what's possible given the larger systems at work in a given location. It's about using observation to guide minimal interventions for maximum effect and to minimize waste of time and labor and resources. So these are concepts about minimal interventions for maximum effect. That's a core permaculture principle from the Bill Mollison canon. And you'll see that popping up time and again when we're doing the conceptual design. That's one of the things we really want to design for on both land sites and when we're dealing with social systems. So as David Holmgren has argued across his canon of work, we want to help make the best advantage of the beneficial energies on a site and to block or soften the detrimental ones. Like we did with social permaculture zones, we can develop a social analogue for permaculture sector analysis. But again, our reference point is not a physical site of land, but rather it's us as individual people. So to do a social permaculture sector analysis, we're locating ourselves in relation to the different interconnected systems that influence our lives. A social sector analysis will show us where and how these systems intersect and interact with our day-to-day existence. So in our activity for this video, we're going to do something that my PDC students have had a lot of fun with over the years. And this is a social permaculture sector analysis, which was first introduced to me several years ago now by Robin Clayfield, who's a permaculture elder and social permaculture pioneer from the Crystal Waters Eco Village in Queensland. And she came up with this model in combo with Robina McCurdy, who's another Permi legend from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Both Robin and Robina are amazing, wonderful people, and I strongly recommend their wisdom. So please do check out their bodies of work. I'm going to link to their websites in the show notes, along with links to other social permaculture superstars that have had a big influence on my thinking over the journey. The graphic that we see here is of a social sector collage that was constructed by participants at one of Robin's many workshops. And this is not from the workshop that I participated in, but we did something very similar with Robin when I first discovered this. And the thing you're going to do now, we're not going to do a collage, but we are going to do this. So think of this as a mental collage. So let's break down this graphic. On the left, we've got a list of sectors from traditional permaculture site design. And on the right, we've got their associated social permaculture analogues. Now, it's important to note that the social sectors are used as analogies of the traditional sectors and not as direct conceptual transfers. This means that we can interpret the social sectors as broadly or as narrowly as we think is appropriate for us and our circumstances. So don't get hung up on the detail. We're using this to get insights on the patterns of our interconnection with larger systems. So in terms of the hands-on component, go through the list and answer each question for each social sector and see what you come up with. This activity is really fun to do with a partner or in a small group because you get to bounce ideas around with each other and come up with new insights through the conversation and the action of deconstructing these ideas together and seeing how they apply to your lives and getting a different context to your own to bounce ideas off. So do make sure that you write your answers in your bootcamp journal. And remember that everything we learn in each activity of the Social Permaculture Online Bootcamp will help us with the upcoming activities in future videos. So by the time we're finished, we'll have all the raw materials for a social transformation plan of action. Once you've completed all the questions, have a reread of the notes that you've jotted down and look for patterns and trends. Was there anything that surprised you in your answers? Was there anything that was a new discovery that you hadn't previously thought of before? Or were there themes in there that, are repetitive themes that you've come across before in your life? So part of doing these activities is the reflective practice component. You want to look back on what you learned from the activities so that you can take something out of it for your practice moving forward.